almost 6:35. I'd like to open the meeting, January 11th meeting of the Manchester MBTA zoning task force. Oh, yeah.
I can scoot over and.
There's plenty of room over here.
So I'm gonna take a roll call. We'll start with Denny Hall. Sure. And Michael Smith. Richard. Yeah. Richard. Ann Harrison.
Here.
And Sandy Barbara Turner.
Here.
Sue Philbrick. Eric Ellis.
Yeah.
Who's not here is.
Sorry.
Margaret.
Is he on the phone?
And Mike Press. is-
Yep, I'm on the phone. That's right, Sarah. Thanks.
So
Thank you, Mike.
we're just missing a Gar.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is acknowledgement of correspondence, and we've gotten two letters, one from Valerie Giovanni, and the other from Donna First. The second is a review of the updated schedule. Does everybody have an updated schedule as of 2 days? So we've already made one change because this is, oh, there's Gar.
There's Gar, yay.
Yeah, and Gar Morris. But by the way, Gail is not here attending, I don't think.
Uh-oh.
No.
No, you already did.
No, she'll do it off the recording.
Well, we can use the recording. Just probably take some notes.
Oh, he's going that side. Never
Oh, but
mind.
he's on the boys' side.
Oh, yeah, he's gonna be on the
Oh,
boys'
God,
side.
You're like Quaker meeting house.
We made room for you, Gar, but I guess you didn't want to be on the woman's
darn.
side.
Thank you.
Getting ready for the Manchester.
Manchester fun. That's right.
So as I was saying, the one change in the schedule is we had a forum scheduled with business owners and property owners in the downtown. And the downtown improvement program committee suggested we put that off to give more time to collect email addresses and so forth. So it will be probably put off a week or two.
So which one is that?
It's
This
the
is
one on
gonna be
the,
on the 18th.
Okay.
I think it's on the top of the one on the third page. January 18th.
And Chris, there's one other, we just put off the forum on February 3rd.
Oh,
That's not on, or that's.
that was the
needs to be
general
confirmed.
zoning one with the
Right.
planning board.
Right.
And the planning board, when we met with them last week, suggested we delay that till after the February vacation to get better attendance, which we all thought was a good idea.
So which date was that?
So we haven't said it yet, but it'll probably be March 2nd.
It was on February 3rd, so that's off.
What was the first one? January what?
The
18th.
18th. Okay, and with that, I'm going to turn this over to Emily Innes, our consultant, to do her thing here.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you all again. Happy
Yeah.
New Year.
Yeah, thank you.
So I understand you've been busy. I had a look at your guiding principles, which I think are very good. I understood from Chris and reaching out to make sure that I knew what you needed from me today, that we would talk a little bit about the guiding principles in relationship to the mapping that we did. So we took all the areas from our last meeting. We mapped them. I have them in both physical form and I have them on my computer, which I can share on Zoom because I understand from Gail that there were some people who understandably couldn't follow what was going on at our last
Right.
meeting, since we were all crowded around the table. So I thought we could do a combination of crowding around the table and then coming back and showing things online when we're ready. So, but before I put maps up there and before we look at this one, I want to let you know what we have. So there are two maps. You'll be familiar with them from the last meeting. One is just the sort of this town center area with the half-mile radius around the train station and the district that we looked at there, and I can see that print out. And then the other is the town as a whole. And what we did was we outlined the areas that we had discussed. They're all numbered 1A, 1B, 1C, et cetera, so that we can refer to them easily. And what we did was we modeled them using the existing zoning. So you will see that some of them have a unit capacity of 0. And in most cases, that's because there is a limitation of just single family in that particular area. And you're not going to get multifamily capacity if it's limited to single family. So what I did do is for those, I simply lifted the single family restriction and ran the models again. So those numbers aren't on this page, but I have them for discussion. If we get to that point and decide that we want to talk about what that means. Having said that, you'll see that some of these areas have quite a lot of unit capacity, more than you need. And so with that, I think that, and using your criteria in the discussion here, I think there's absolutely room for which areas do you want more unit capacity and more density? Which areas would you prefer a lower unit capacity and density? And what I'd like to do is at the end of our discussion this evening, narrow this down, sort of the process of winnowing things down. It's not that we're going to come up with a final solution tonight, but I'd like to take the things that should be out of consideration, and then we can go back and look at these. The way that we've looked at them now, we're looking at them all individually. What I'd like to do is be able to look at them together in the next stage and see what that leads us to. And then do we need to have a second round of winnowing down? So, and then the other part that I'd like to know from you is, obviously this is a public meeting. There are people on listening. I'm sure there are people who've been following it. But at one point, do you want to take what we've been doing and winnowing down areas to for a wider public discussion, and then what would you need from me at that point? So that should come into our thinking as well.
I have a question
Of course.
to help me understand what these maps represent, Emily. So just as a for instance,
Yes.
looking at area 1A, that little, square, I think it's 4 acres. It's where there is currently a low-income elderly housing development. And there are either, depending on which database you look at, 32 or 40 units
Yes.
on the portion of that property that is not the 2 single-family lots.
So what I'm gonna
So
do before
help
we
me
go further
understand.
is I'm just gonna share my screen, just so
Great.
you all know what
That-
I'm doing, so
that would be
people
great.
can see what we're doing. And I'm gonna switch glasses because I can't
Yes.
see my screen.
I'm so sympathetic.
I think I've mentioned a host.
And I
Awesome,
hate
we'll find out.
bristling with glasses. It's like you need a whole separate carry-all.
Exactly, so yes, I'm sorry, I interrupted you just to let you know what was going on, but please continue, yeah.
Okay, so what I'm trying to understand is there are 3 lots, 2, I believe, single-family lots, and then the large lot where the housing development is. And so what I don't understand is the zoning just totally out of whack with what exists?
Mhm.
Okay.
Single family.
It is zoned
It
for
is
single
family
family, yeah.
and no, okay,
And so what happens with the model, just so you know, is you would expect, because I always have to remind myself, like, why is it that this is not showing the number that I expect? So I go back, double check and say, yes, I remember. It's quite a complex model. The reason it's showing 0 capacity, even though it's zoned for single family, is because if you model for fewer than 10 units, it just returns an answer of 0 because you're not modeling for multifamily. So the current zoning is single family. Single family doesn't count as multifamily, so you're not seeing any capacity on
at
there.
all.
Yes, even though knowing that there are 3 parcels, you should see 3 units, 1 per parcel, but that's not multifamily, so the
Right.
model kicks it out. And that's so it doesn't do something weird with 1 and 2 units in the calculations. You could way overstate what you're getting or unfairly state what the results are if you don't kick out the non-compliant results.
Okay, so I need some help actually, maybe from Anne and Sarah. So how that development came to be, was it got a special permit or?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
No, it would have been before planning board.
okay,
Yeah, it would have gone before planning board.
This is public housing, so.
right.
So it was like 1964 and 1973.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
It's not recent.
And that may also be why when we see non-conforming things, it could have gone under a different process. The zoning could have changed since then.
Yes.
It, for many of your buildings, obviously, they predate the zoning, sometimes by centuries.
Altogether. Often by centuries, yeah.
On this particular parcel, half of a third of it is inside the circle
Yes.
and 2/3 is outside. What impact is that going to have if we choose? It, I understand it's also too small as spot zoning, but if we were to connect it to something,
Right, so I'm gonna actually address the second part first. So the reason it's called 1A and there's a 1B and a 1C is because A, B, and C are sub-districts of a larger area one. We had talked about creating sub-districts there.
Yes.
So you're absolutely right, and it's useful for people listening in to know at 4 acres, it by itself would be non-compliant as a district because you have to have a minimum of 5. But because we were thinking of it as part of the larger sub-district one, it works with that. It's allowed to be with that because it's contiguous with 1B. To the first part of your question, yes, so you do have a requirement of how many acres or what percentage needs to be within the station area. Part of that is inside, part of that is outside. The model will calculate the components of that. So,
thank you.
it only becomes an issue if we're kind of on the line of how much and how many are within the station area.
I thought it was 40% within the station area.
Yeah, but I think that if it's split, I thought I read that half of it had to be in or something to count.
But
Well, it really only matters if you don't have enough elsewhere in the station area, right? So if you're teetering on the line,
Doesn't
we have to
matter.
worry about it. Yeah, if you're well within it, because we kept some of these others, then you don't need to worry about it.
So that determination, which of bisecting that lot, that doesn't occur in the model.
No,
That
no.
would occur afterward during the evaluation process.
There's a component of the model that calculates how much of your area is within the station area, so it would be calculated as part of that. It's not necessarily going in and saying this particular parcel is bisected in
Oh.
exactly the same way. There is a larger calculation where GIS basically looks at what we've drawn
I
in
see.
there and says, this much is within the station area, it's that percent.
That's a calculation we don't have access to.
Yeah, it's buried within the model itself, I think, and the layers that the state has given us that we can.
But that's not in the spreadsheet.
It is in the spreadsheet model. It is not the first page, but it's part of the calculation, the second page, and it comes from the GIS layers. So, but it's not there is a component that is a parcel by parcel basis that's pulled through and it's on the district pages. But the total calculation is on page 2. It's just not called out as, as much as some of the other components are, but it should be down towards the bottom.
Okay, so let me be sure I understand. So the model would essentially calculate only the portion or inside the circle would only include the portion of the property that was within the
Yeah,
circle.
exactly.
Okay.
And it does that. So we don't have to calculate that.
So Emily, do these calculations assume the current zoning dimensional requirements, setbacks, 35 feet high, all that?
All of what you see on the map online and the maps that you can go and look at and we can pass around, all of those are based on the current zoning. So we went through and looked at that. So again, we can tweak that, right? As we move forward, as we narrow down, we can say, we want to work with the height, we want to work with the open space percentage, we want to work with some of the areas, so that's all available to us. And that's why this is still an iterative process.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, and District 1C is slightly different than what we had selected. We were just excluding a single lot along Central.
Yes, and I think some of the scribbles didn't come out quite the way I expected, so, that is why I have more 10. Feel free to change the boundaries of any of these and clarify, absolutely, so. So again, for people online who maybe haven't seen this before and just joining, we're looking with this test at the unit capacity, which is the number of multifamily units that could be generated in each of these areas. And the model dwelling unit per acre is, according to the model, how many dwelling units per acre could be here. We refer to that as the density. You'll see total area and density denominator. The total area is the entire area of the district that we're testing. The density denominator removes the excluded land, and so that's the land that can't be modeled for unit capacity. So that probably means more to me than others at the moment, but it's useful for us to keep track of.
Okay, let me ask you a question about
Yeah,
that, so I
absolutely.
understand. On, District 1D,
Yes.
all the others, the total area and the density denominator are the same. On 1D, they're slightly different by a tenth of an acre. And is that because of flooding or?
It's because of there'll be a tenth of an acre of excluded land on there, and then excluded land, I don't remember all of it counting off my head, but that's things like watershed protection, level 1. Actual surface water, wetlands, public land, privately owned educational land, which obviously we see in other parts.
Yeah.
You
So
can see the wetlands in the upper right-hand corner.
yes.
So just for the people online who probably enjoyed staring at this for a while, I'm just going to go to the next one where we zoom out. And our discussion at the last meeting, again, just to bring people up to date, was to look at areas beyond that half-mile radius. So we have this area A up towards the top of the map there that we looked at. And then we have this area B1, B2, and B3 over to the right-hand corner that we looked at as well. Everything else is pretty much within the half-mile radius. So, and again, as you look at these and as you think of the criteria, you're not necessarily limited to just winnowing these down, because I know you've had conversations since I was last here. If there's something that we need to add to this, that's also just fine at this stage.
Yeah, there's a
It's another
section that's
district.
hidden here
Yes.
that we were interested in.
We had talked about the educational land. The
Yeah.
trouble is we don't have a single parcel that we can test there. So you have to test a parcel. I have one community where we did an A&R and tested that, but we have to have a parcel that we can test. So even though that was a conversation that the town, in our discussions, that the town thought maybe we should have, what are they going to do? We didn't have something specific that we could say.
Oh, I thought it was all one parcel.
I think there's actually multiple, as you say, we could zoom in, but I believe it's actually multiple parcels, and that was the problem. Because you kind of see going over to the right-hand side, if you follow 1A over, you can see how those parcels are split up. I believe that there's that same thing on the left, on the part that's being covered.
Yeah, there
Since
was,
right in here, there's a lot of
Yeah, we
smaller.
were talking about this area.
there was one other
Also
scenario. That was a sort of Desmond Summer Brook area that maybe we didn't trace it on the map when we were all together. I think
Okay.
it was in terms of the scenarios Richard's run before, it was G1140, and it was pretty interesting.
Then, yeah, by all means, let's get it on the map.
Is that one of the cricket building, the old cricket?
Yes.
building?
Yeah.
Yes, we talked about that. I didn't think we'd actually, I remember we talked about which building was which. I didn't think we'd outlined the parcel.
Okay, so we should do
Yeah,
that
we should
today.
do that, absolutely. Mhm. So how would you like to proceed? I would be happy to go. And what we can do is choose one of the maps, stand around it again, but maybe let the camera, you'll see I pushed the table forward and oriented the map so it was facing the cameras. So if we don't block the camera, I think I was guilty of that myself last time. And we leave the map that we're talking about up, we could go and have a conversation around the map if you think that would be helpful.
It would be
I
great,
just
but I have one more.
Yes, of
question
course.
on the map,
Yeah, please.
this bigger map,
Yes.
you have more unit capacity in places. So is that not just based on, oh no, I guess I'm wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
And moment of panic for me.
No, there's just more.
Do we have
things. Never
consistent
mind.
data? Okay.
Question about on the full town map,
Yes,
in the upper left-hand corner, just below Hamilton.
yes.
It's a little hard to tell under the label.
Yes,
Is that area excluded?
there's quite a bit, yes, there's quite a bit of excluded land within it. That would be the hatched lines. So I can
Well,
see,
there's also the green, which is listed as excluded.
Included.
I'm sorry, the lines are sensitive land. Yes, the green is excluded land. Yes.
Is it possible to take that label out and just look and see if that's all excluded?
That's what I asked, yeah.
Yes, it is. And in fact, as we're moving up, I may have an earlier version of this on here that would not have the label.
Oh, that would be great.
Because I see white things underneath.
Because that's, yeah, that's,
Maybe they're white.
that's the Gordon College
Yes,
area, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And it is excluded now, so you would have to, in
But we're
order,
questioning whether it's all excluded or not.
you're questioning whether it's all excluded, and the other question is going to be, could between now and December 31st,
Right.
something happen there, that would remove it from being excluded. I think that's something that can.
And to make it unexcluded, Gordon College would have to decide it's not for education purposes somehow.
So it's I think it would be a little bit more complex because they're a private college. If it were a town, for example, you would have a disposition process actually happening, disposing of the land for the purposes of housing that were, if HLC were satisfied that that was happening before you applied for compliance, it could be acceptable. Because it's owned by a private entity, if that was something that became part of the discussion, we would have to go and chat with HLC about how they saw that and what they would require.
So it has to be susceptible to development.
It would have to be available for development, absolutely. So.
What does
Um,
available for development mean?
Well, they could
according
move it
the-
to a for-profit entity,
I
right?
think they'd have to actually sell it, yes, to somebody who, so, I mean, it would have to know, in this, in the case of the private, my guess, since I don't know what the procedure is, that they would have to actually sell the land or be an active
They could create,
process of selling.
they
it.
could create a for-profit company themselves and
Yeah.
transfer it to a,
In theory,
I mean, they legally
yeah.
could do that, I think. I mean, you can have,
I mean, the reason
an
is
educational institution can own property that's not for education purposes.
that, well, and that is the key right there, is it
Yeah.
would have to somehow
Not
be
be for
clear to HLC
Yeah.
that it was no longer available for educational
Okay,
purposes.
yeah.
And that, I know the municipal process for that. I
Yeah,
don't know how HLC would view a private entity.
Okay.
It's not to say that the conversation shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
It's just that we would need to include HLC. So.
I have a model question, trying to understand. I think this may have come in an email in response to some questions from Chris and Richard.
Ah, yes,
And there's a little chart
yes,
on the second page
yeah,
about scenario 1C, 1B, B2, et cetera.
yes,
And there are two additional columns, result and original model.
yes,
And the original model, as I understand it, is current zoning.
yes.
And I don't understand, you said you removed the 4-unit per lot restriction,
Mhm.
but is there any restriction on the number of units on a lot? What is the result column mean?
So the result column meant that I went back into the model. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Original model means what you see on the maps today. And the result was me going in and saying, okay, we've got some interesting results here. Let's take off the restrictions. So that 4-unit per lot restriction that basically says you can only have 4 units on the lot. What happens if you take it off? What does it look like then? So at that point, there's no restriction on the number of units on the lot. And that's what the result looks like.
Okay, so then,
When you say no restriction,
what does that mean?
we have setbacks and
Right, yes. What I mean is there's no unit restriction. There's nothing that says you can only have so many units on the lot. It's up to the model to calculate everything else and tell you what the capacity is. And the reason I did that, so those areas have currently, you can have 4 units per lot via special permit. So essentially I'm saying, okay, let's take out, what we did in the original model was essentially say, it's allowed by special permit, let's model it the 4 units. So that's what we did. With the second test, I'm saying, let's take off that 4-unit restriction. model it that way, and you see the difference. For the test above that, that's not in a chart, it's just a list. What I did was take off the restriction of it being a single family and say, all right, pretend that that requirement no longer exists, what we get for units. So having, yes.
So you also leave off base lot and additional lot size.
Yeah.
No, I didn't,
Right.
no, I did not. I just made the one change, that
Oh,
one
okay.
change.
So did you
yes.
have anything in there for base lot and additional lot? Probably not.
I found that we didn't want additional lot in there because it didn't apply to us.
Oh, I think we definitely do.
No, it's not part of our current zoning.
Well, that
Well-
doesn't matter to me.
Well.
I only modeled, so just for clarity, I only modeled the current zoning for what you see.
Okay,
For the additional changes that I just mentioned, I only made that one change. So
Okay.
everything else is your
using
additional
the
zoning.
6,000.
Exactly.
per lot.
I
mean,
just
6,000
played with how many.
Okay, so the minimum lot size is 6,000 square
And the
feet.
40%
Depending on-
coverage,
yes.
okay.
Everything that's current,
Okay.
I left in place.
Okay.
And again, that suggests, okay, do you want more? Do you want less? We
Yep.
can work with dimensional standards.
Before
Yeah.
we stand up and,
Yeah,
I worry about, B1, B2, and B3.
Mhm.
It's obviously outside the circle.
Yeah.
It's relatively hard to get to. It's full of sensitive land. It's likely to flood. And there's no sewer out there.
Oh, there's no sewer.
There is no sewer.
Whatsoever.
No,
Okay, so B2.
B1,
B1,
B2, and
B3.
B3
Okay.
should
strike
come
me as
off the
being
list, I think.
unwise to include.
You know, it does bring up a general question, though, to me, because we certainly, I think we all care about sensitive land. But I wonder how much we care about just how buildable the lot is and whether or not there's a danger of flooding. That's not really our problem.
but,
That's the developer.
but in this area, every house that's renovated has to go to, 14 feet above the flood
baseball.
base level.
Because
It's required by Concom. Yeah. We've had some in ZBA and they have to raise the houses up.
I was really raising that as a more general
Yeah,
point. We had a
right.
letter to that issue
Yeah,
as well. And my feeling is that
It's not our problem.
I don't care about flooding, except that as it directly affects us by regulation.
Well, I think, the criteria that you worked on at the last meeting, that would be a great way of just looking again at all of these districts and saying, do they meet your preferred criteria or
I
not?
don't think we have a criterion for sewage. But
I think we have for
There's an
infrastructure.
infrastructure, but this is a bad area to try and put septic systems
Right.
in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
I just don't think it would be.
Does it also have town
Acceptable
water?
either.
or do-
Yeah.
it has town water.
Intrusion
Ah.
and septic systems, yeah.
Yeah, it's,
I'm not arguing for that area at all, but I am curious as to how does that issue of septic affect us? I mean, why would we be concerned about that now?
I would be concerned about these three areas.
Yeah, I'm not talking about these three.
And septic, because the residents are not gonna buy into that type of allowing development on that type of area. I don't think it's sellable.
You don't think it's sellable to the public?
to the
as a-
town meeting.
to the
As
town.
opposed to what?
To the town residents.
Yeah, no, I understand you mean to the town residents, Sarah. But I mean, I think we've really gotta put options out there and find out what's so.
Yeah, but these are,
Yeah.
they flood, most of this land is excluded, because it floods, there's no sewer, it's,
A lot of it's restricted because
Right.
of the
it's all sensitive land.
Well, not all except B2, the 5.9.
B1 all has hash marks in green.
Right, I'm saying B2 is the only one that seems like it might be an interesting idea. Because it's not covered with hash marks, but given the constraint, the sewage and septic and all that, I don't.
Mike Pratt has got his hand up.
Yes. Mike?
Oh.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Just in layman's terms, what is excluded versus sensitive? Like, is sensitive wetlands and excluded is designated conservation or what? Just again, 30,000 foot layman's terms.
Excellent question, Mike. So the excluded land, for the purposes of what we need to be concerned about, excluded land, you can't model for unit capacity. It does not count. And I'll explain what each is in a minute. Sensitive land is, if there's a condition that a town might be concerned about, like, for example, floodplains, but could be modeled for unit capacity because there are ways of building on floodplains. So excluded land might be the surface water and the wetlands. Is surface water, it is wetlands, it is the level 1 protection or buffer around water resources. It's public land. Sensitive land is level 2. It's floodplains, a couple of other things like that where there's no building prohibition. But in terms of modeling it, the sensitive land can be modeled, whereas excluded land can't. So when you see the green, note that that's not going to be counting towards unit capacity, the hash marks can. However, to the point of this conversation, sensitive land can be very important in good planning conversations. And so it may indicate that you might not want to locate housing there, or you should just think twice about locating housing there. And we can, you know, if it comes down to that, we can delve back into the sensitive land layers and let you know precisely what is what. Not today. It does require some additional work, but we can do that. So if you want to know why something is sensitive land, we can give you that information.
I guess I'm still a little confused. I mean, I'm just trying to keep things as simple as possible if it is. I mean, I look at Winthrop Field as in green, right? And so I assume that's in green because it's designated, right? Like no development can happen on Winthrop Field, right?
It's municipal, well, it's municipal, isn't it?
Yeah, if it's
It's
municipally owned, then it can't be developed for housing. So it is excluded.
But isn't,
Right. Versus I look in the inner harbor and I see the hash marks and I assume that's wetlands, right?
No, it would be floodplain. Wetlands would be under excluded land.
Okay. I'll
Yeah.
think of it like that then, I guess. Okay. All right. Thanks.
The other questions?
Here's a really out of the left field question. So having done this modeling and looked at the areas that this subcommittee sort of designated as possible, do you draw the conclusion possibly that, gosh, Manchester's probably going to be able to comply with the MBTA zoning statute, or no way? I don't see how they do it.
Oh, I think you're going to be able to comply. I don't have a worry about.
Let us just put in open town meeting here as an issue.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant by
Right,
capacity.
by the
calculations,
capacity
yeah.
and measure that you're using.
I don't want to anticipate the town meeting vote.
No, I don't expect you
Yeah.
to
Okay.
predict the votes at town meeting. That's a
no one
tough
can
one.
do that.
That's a hazardous duty
No, I'm
assignment.
saying based on the measurements that you're doing,
Yeah.
it appears that there's a pretty good likelihood that we could designate adequate areas that would fulfill the requirements of the law.
I think that is possible.
Thank you.
Yes, I think that is possible.
Thank you.
Mark, you think there was ever any doubt about that?
I didn't know the answer to that, Richard. I wasn't sure. But it's always good to have a third party take a look and say, oh, you guys are all wet or not. That's,
We are very wet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is true. When you look at your sensitive land, that is absolutely
Oh
true.
my gosh, I couldn't believe we've got like 18 acres and half is water.
I did note, by the way, driving from parking lot, that you seem to have had a little storm surge.
yeah.
That's not
Police-
unusual.
Police station, Council on Aging were flooded, the fire department was flooded.
I have one more question.
Yeah, of course.
Connecting to Mike's about a clarification on excluded land.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's go back to my little favorite parcel on 1A there.
In fact, I'm
Okay.
gonna switch maps so people can see it more clearly. So here's one
Yeah.
eye for those of you watching on TV.
Yep,
Yep.
thank you. That's in Newport, the part that is the housing development, Newport part. That is town-owned land.
No, it is
No, it's
not.
not.
It's not.
No, it's owned by the housing authority.
And in fact, I'm gonna zoom
Controlled by the
in so
state.
everybody can see it a little bit more
Oh, I
closely.
didn't know
Yeah.
that. Okay, and that's true of all the housing. Okay,
Up the plains, Newport Park and Loading Place.
okay, and
Road.
the fact that the housing authority is a public entity, that doesn't matter.
Nope,
Okay,
it's not a municipality.
It's a
Okay.
state agency, actually.
Great.
Mike has his hand up again.
Mike?
Maybe he just left it up from last time.
Um,
Yeah. I'm gonna zoom back out. I apologize for making people dizzy online. But if you wanted to start with this interior map, that might be a good place to start. And again, you did that work on the criteria. I have pens here. We can make some more.
Before
Yes.
we go, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, not at all.
The area immediately adjacent to where they think the T station is, where it isn't, on the south side of the tracks.
Yes,
Um,
just for reference, you mean this?
I mean Harbor's Point.
It's not included.
It's not included.
Yeah, we took it out at the last
No, we
meeting.
took it out. It's not there. This is north of Summer Street.
Yeah, I just
D is.
would like to review why we took that out, just for clarity.
So I'll tell you what I remember, and then everybody can tell me whether or not I was correct, but my memory is that it was because the concern was that it wanted to stay commercial. And that the collected conversation was that, that was an important commercial place or a commercial use.
I'm surprised that that's a more important commercial use than grocery store. Than the grocery store.
You know,
My recollection
My
of that.
recollection was a little different. I
Okay.
thought we were worried about it because of the size of the lot.
With
It's
one
such-
owner.
So
Yeah.
my suggestion would be that it's worth discussing to find out and explore if there's any way we might be able to use it in a way that we were comfortable with. But I think we were initially dismayed we couldn't think of a way in which we could deal with a lot that size. Is that-
Right,
Right.
and one owner,
is that
there,
what you remember, Sarah?
Okay,
Right,
then,
Mike-
then I took the wrong notes.
The
Okay.
concern was it would be too big an edifice.
Oh, okay.
Too big
Yeah.
to zone.
Mhm. Zone, I love it.
And to retain the commercial made it very
Well,
difficult to find a
so-
location.
and to retain the character of the
Yeah.
town.
Yeah.
Right.
So that raises
That's
the
pretty
question,
limited as
actually.
the character of the town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there's still confusion, at least in my mind, about mixed use development and what the rules are for that.
Oh, yes.
Okay. You are allowed to have mixed use in your multifamily area. You absolutely are allowed to do it. You cannot mandate it.
Okay,
That is,
So-
there are other things about mixed use and how it relates to capacity and stuff. Put that all aside to the moment. For a basic MBTA district, you are absolutely allowed to have mixed use. You can have commercial. You can even have industrial if you want to, right? You can have any mix of uses, but you can't mandate mixed
so
use.
if we mandate it, what happens?
Well, it's not an MBTA communities district. It would have to
Right, but
be-
then how does it affect the calculations for?
Okay, now that's a different thing.
Can we go back one step?
Yes.
So apply Harbor Point. If that was zoned
Mhm.
and be as an MBTA district
Yeah.
and we can't mandate commercial use, the whole thing could be
Could be
developed into
residential.
residential. Is that correct?
So that would be correct.
Okay.
It could be developed as all multifamily, but when I said, you can still allow mixed use, you can also put incentives in for mixed use, just as you can for other things such as affordability or historic preservation or any of those. So for example, just making up numbers, you could say you're allowed to do multifamily at 3 stories. Make it 2 stories, multifamily at 2 stories. We would calculate the capacity at 2 stories. But if you want to do mixed use, you can go up to 3 stories or 4
Ah.
stories. Now, there's an incentive to do that mixed use because they're going to get more development square footage out of it. So that's how you could still provide for a mixed use environment while allowing the multi,
Without the mandate.
without the
Got
mandate,
it.
exactly.
Got
Now
it.
let's go back to the mandate and its
Yes.
effect. So it becomes not a mixed use, it becomes, if you mandate mixed use, it becomes not an MBTA district.
You wouldn't, you can't mandate mixed use in an MBTA
Right,
district. So
okay.
any zoning district where you say, you know what, we have to have mixed use here, we want to mandate it, and there are good reasons why we're doing that. You just take that out of your consideration from an MBTA.
But
district.
then what happens to the number of potential residential units that could be built there?
So
is that-
then you can model that district as a mixed use district, calculate what the capacity is, use that capacity to offset your required number of units.
Not
Yes.
the acreage, but the number of
Not,
units.
but the number of units.
Okay,
correct.
up to 25% of the
I
total
believe that is
required.
correct. Yes, I really want to put that formula in front of myself, but I believe that is correct.
Okay,
Yes.
great, that's what I wanted to say.
So
Thank you.
If we think about the minimum of 30 acres or so inside the, or 15 acres inside the circle.
Mhm.
If we were to zone with mandated commercial inside that parcel, we could offset up to 3 or 4 acres worth of the MBTA district. Am I
Unit
correct about that?
capacity, unit capacity,
Well,
not the
same thing.
acres.
We can't count it in the acreage.
But
I understand that, but it would
But
be.
the density could be lower.
But the point is, I
Yes,
see, we would
exactly.
still have to have the same number of acres, but the density would lower, so it would be down to 12.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yes, yes,
Depending on the, yes.
But you still have. to
which
have
is a
15 acres.
reason to do
Okay,
it.
Thank you.
So I think we were still discussing it at the last meeting. If we want to talk about modeling a mixed use district, we can add that to our next steps.
Okay.
So, and I'll make a note that we should.
You also can do it outside of any of the MBTA stuff.
Right.
Because
Separate
again,
and apart.
a large portion of Beach Street is one owner. So that you run the risk of one large building.
So we can do that. We'll see what that looks like and come back to you.
Okay, that's great, thank you. I was looking,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's been a little murky.
Yes, yeah, so we were so busy talking about districts, I don't want to muddy the waters further, but I think this is a good point to look at that, so.
You're looking at this, it's interesting, this is a lot line that cuts right through the grocery store.
Right.
And the rest of this lot, everything along the south side of Summer Street here is one lot until you get to the electric.
The
Yeah,
transformer.
So that is going to be, you know, personally, I'd like to see Madam Haddam and the bank. But it can't be separated.
Right.
Mike has his hand raised again. Sorry, Mike, I was looking at the map and lots of instructions.
No, I don't have my hand raised anymore.
It's all,
Can you lower it then?
it's all one parcel.
Oh, geez.
Can you lower it in Zoom?
Thank you.
So we don't get
It-
confused.
It's showing I could raise my hand. It doesn't offer me the chance to lower
Okay,
it.
so maybe it was on my side, Mike. Apologies for that. I've cleared it off on mine now. So I'm going to leave this up. So this is, so what I'm going to suggest is that we talk about this map first, so people can follow along when we talk about it. We should be clear which area we're talking about. And that way we can go up there. And then when we're ready to switch to the next map, I'll come back and switch it over again so people can follow along.
Yeah, the other thing I want to say is on these ones that you did the results with the 4
Uh-huh.
units. I think it would be great to do it with the 3 units.
With 3 units instead, okay.
I could-
So that would restrict it further because that
Right,
result
yeah.
means that there's no
But we
restrictions on
allow
it.
3 units by right in an existing structure today.
Oh, so
And if we
then
can model it in existing structures, that would be really good.
that is going
So
to, just so you know, that's not going to be easy. It
Yeah.
can be done. I've
Yeah.
actually worked with a colleague and we were drawing straws who got to do it and he drew the straw for that one, so I'll draw the straw for this one. But we can do it. It will take a little bit of
Yeah.
time.
But I just think it would be beneficial for us to understand
Mhm.
under existing zoning, whether we could qualify and still have the 1.5 parking units per,
And just remind me,
Per
that's for
unit.
every single district?
No.
No, I didn't.
General
think that's
district.
just the general district. Okay.
I've got the same objection that I always have when you bring this up, Sarah. We don't have three unit by right. We have 3 unit by right with 5 parking spaces.
right, but I'm telling her to use the 1.5 parking spaces per unit in the model.
Oh, so she's gonna do 5 parking spaces for 3 families, because that's the zoning.
Yeah, 1.5 per unit is 5. You round up.
She's putting it in the model, so 5 would be what she put in the model.
I think she does it per unit.
Okay, I don't think that's going to, my guess is that's not going to show us anything that is usable. It's not gonna get us close to 15.
I think
But
that
by
it,
all means.
I think it is beneficial for us to understand what we have today
Yeah,
and what the capacity could be.
and it's beneficial for us to show that
Right,
to the residents. This is
The
what
other
we
big
have
difference
today.
is that you're comparing a zoning restriction now, which allows up to 3 family in the footprint of the
Right.
original building,
right.
with an MBTA law, and if you did that same density with MBTA, you would have eliminated the requirement to retain the structure.
But
footprint.
that's what I'm asking her to model, is to retain the existing structure
In a
and
way,
see how it results.
it's a sort of an aid to the voter.
It
Yeah.
is, yeah,
He
that's what it
says,
is.
or I say I'm a voter, just pretend I'm a voter.
You better be a voter.
Yeah, I am a voter. I'm registered. And so if I go and I say, well, we do nothing, this is how many units could
You built.
But this would be
potentially
for the entire.
develop
G
in
district.
this area.
So it's much bigger.
So, and in many ways,
Circle.
people,
But that's-
I'm sure justifiably, are very anxious about development. But one of the things they should be aware of is we have right now.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so,
I see the point. My reaction to it is that I think that's a bit misleading to show that to people. Because the fact of the matter is that after the MBTA zoning, after an area is zoned for MBTA, they will no longer be restrained to the existing footprints.
Maybe we don't need to rezone it because maybe we comply already. We
We
don't.
already know we
that.
don't. We already know. we don't.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
So I think where we're gonna comply is that there'll be a huge capacity, but the general district is much bigger than.
But even if you do it for the zones we're selecting, so that you would know what can you do today? And so how much additional would the MBTA zoning result in? Because that's one of the questions of people, is how many units can we build today versus what's the incremental change?
Well, I don't think this goes anywhere, but I have less objection to doing it in the areas we've selected, because I think it's a pretty big use of resources. I don't think that's gonna be a simple model to make. And maybe you can tell me, but it sounds like if to model the entire general district based upon a 5-unit parking restriction and unit sizes that exist there today, seems to me a daunting prospect.
But the way they do parking, Richard, is almost every lot can contain the 5 spots.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
We can look
does
at
this,
it.
this count only the 6,000 square foot lots, or does it include all the tiny ones?
6,000, it's,
So you have
only
to
the
have-
6,000 would be by
6,000.
right.
So
But when,
does the current law allow conversion to 3 units on a substandard, subsize?
Yes, good
by
question.
special permit,
And
Okay, so when we look at your model of the general district, we are only looking at lots that are 6,000
Right.
more feet or larger.
but just to set the record straight, when we looked at the Elm Street, the Morse Court,
Yep, yep.
going up Pine Street, there were only 2
Yep.
lots that were less than 6,000 square feet.
Right.
So
But-
it wasn't a
but-
huge number.
But if you're talking about doing that for the whole of the general district, I think you'll find that there are more small lots.
Right,
Or we're just gonna do a subsection of the.
Right.
I would think just
So
the
the-
subsection.
The lot size isn't the tricky part, right? So if we're setting it
structure
up,
size.
I can just as easily say, let's look and see what it is at 6,000, and let's look and see what it is at 0. So we're capturing all of the existing lots. That's not a tricky thing, and I can give you both numbers, and you can
Great.
say, what's that look like?
Is there,
What's that
is
mean?
there any point in doing the 0? Because, I mean,
No.
Well, it depends on how many now. So the model will tell me there's on the district page up at the top,
Mhm.
there's this gray box.
Oh.
And that gray box tells us how many non-conforming lots there are.
Yep.
It gives us some other clues to if the results aren't what we expected them to be. We can look up there and get a sense of why those results aren't, because there's some other clues up there, but one of them is non-conforming. So I can run it and I can say, oh, there's 5 non-conforming lots. It's not gonna make that much of a difference. Or
probably.
there's 200 non-conforming
Right,
lots.
that's,
and maybe we gotta think
that's
about
more
that.
likely.
Yeah,
likely.
exactly. So then I can play with it, right? So what is it, how many non-conforming are there at the current zoning of 6,000? Let me change it to 5,000. Okay, and how many more non-conforming? So I can ratchet it down till we get to reasonable.
Don't go to 0.
No,
Good point.
I think just doing the current is really all that's needed.
Okay.
It's
So,
free, do the others, but
It's not free. We're gonna wind up, I think, with many iterations, so I don't want to use it.
I have a broader question.
Yeah.
One of the things we're trying to do is figure out how best to explain what we have today
Mhm.
versus what this law requires. And in working with other towns, what have you found to be a way that people understand, a good way to express current zoning in an old town like ours, where most of the building, well, much of the building happened before zoning,
Mhm.
where we have this hodgepodge and this teeny land area and all of these excluded and sensitive areas. What have you found in your experience is a good way to explain this in a reasonable fashion to the people who will have to make a decision?
There's a couple of different ways. I mean, actually talking about what you just talked about is what are the existing challenges is part of that. We've modeled the current capacity under current zoning, so that's a good way. This is what you see now is your current capacity. It's not what's built. It's what could be built using this model under this zoning. So that's a good way of saying it. That's the baseline. And then what happens if we make changes? So now you're looking at the baseline versus, what the proposal might be. That's a good way of doing it, talking about, if we allowed the 3 families, that, to your point, that is another data point that could go in there. I think that's important. I think based on, the questions that Mike had, and I'm sure other people have, it's clear that explaining the difference between excluded and sensitive land will be very important and why. And I do have slides that explain that. I just don't have them in front of my face, but you have a list of what those are. And so we can give that out. So a couple of the techniques that some of my communities are using. I was talking with one community about fact sheets today. That are topic specific, and we can certainly do that. You may already have started doing that because I know you've done a lot of work already. Working with the community on a newsletter. Actually, I'm working with the community. We're trying to see if we can do a video that talks about what this is that people can watch on their own. And given some of the comments, we could do, the short videos that explain each element. Like you could have a short video, a minute on excluded land, a minute on sensitive land, something that people can watch in a very quick time period. So. But I think it's going to be the combination of people understanding what is there now and what could be there. That's going to help a lot.
I have, Sarah, I want to be sure that I've understood the chart you sent to Richard.
Yeah.
So if you look at the bottom line of that chart, where it says general district and original model, I think you may have already done what Sarah is
No,
asking.
she used 4 units, not 3.
Ah, 4 units.
And
okay.
I did it based on the entire parcel, so.
Not the
Ah.
existing structure.
Okay,
I mean, I'm sure a lot of our structures are not 3,000 square feet, which means you couldn't have 3 units based on the model.
And so I think it's important that it's structure, not footprint. In other
Right.
words, I can't knock the building down and just build up in the footprint.
Right.
I have to use the existing structure.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just
The
double
question
check that.
is that information
wait, I
available?
don't understand that. I don't understand what you just said.
So our current zoning
Mhm.
says by right, in the general district, you can build 3 units in an existing structure
In an existing
Right.
structure, ah,
as long as you have 1.5 spaces, parking spaces per unit.
okay.
And so that doesn't allow you to change the structure itself. So you can't go up higher.
Do you have to meet the open space restrictions still?
Yeah, well, that's in the setbacks.
Lot coverage.
Our lot coverage is only 40%.
To be fine.
So
I
they
might
can
actually have
have,
an easier way of doing this.
Okay.
Think of it.
whatever you.
Yeah, okay, let me be sure I understand that. Okay, so if I have an existing structure in the general district and the size of my lot is 6,000 square feet or more.
Yep.
Then as long as I keep the exterior of the structure the same, I can make 3 units in
Yep.
that structure, even if it was a single family unit previously.
So across the street,
By right.
yeah, across the street from me used to be a single family, and many years ago, they converted it into 3 condos.
Uh-huh,
And it would, based on the square footage in those condos, it would average out to be 1,000 feet per condo.
okay.
And it's, I think technically 2.5 stories,
Okay.
because the 3rd story has dormers.
But it has to be an existing structure. You can't knock
Yes.
the structure down and.
Right,
But
under current zoning.
do you
But you
have-
can knock the structure down, rebuild a single family house.
And then
Yes.
convert it.
And then convert it, yes,
Wow.
as long as it, yeah. There's no definition in the bylaw that says it had to be existing as of X date.
So I could knock down your your 2,500 square foot building, put up my, single family at 3,000 and then divide it into 3 units.
Sure.
That seems excessively complicated for somebody.
Boy,
to
it's-
do. However, I think the mathematical calculation would probably work, assuming your assessor's data collects the information that I hope they do.
It is square footage by floor.
Oh, wow, that's
Rooms.
pretty good.
But when you get. to
Unless it's a
condos,
condo.
the condo
Unless
is
it's a
double.
condo, all bets are off.
Oh, it has square footage. Condos have square footage,
You said
All right.
a lot size.
but not lot
They don't have
size.
lot size.
Oh, I went to Master Deeds to get all those lot sizes
All right.
on Union Street.
Well,
I think
I'll
we
see
should,
what
I think
can-
we should get up to the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get up to the map, so.
Okay,
And so everybody watching on television, we're going to work first with this map that just focuses on the radius around the train station. And I've got Margaret.
while we're walking to the map, just one quick clarification. I've seen Denny was saying 40% of the total has to be within the circle. I've seen other places it says 50. Can you clarify?
I'll pull it up as we
Yeah.
talk. Yeah.
The units are 40%.
I'm going, that's what I'm going to
I think it was
do.
very-
Units are 40%.
40% of the units have.
But
to
not
be-
the
Manchester,
acreage.
And the reason the
It's
acreage is
the same
lower
percentage.
is
as
how much of our
water.
acreage within the circle.
It's
That's
I looked
for
it up
us.
today.
For our
Ah,
town,
maybe
because of our
Generally,
topography.
50%.
But I did
Back to
The
the middle
map
of the
of it.
water.
I did lots of modeling, Sandy, and I tried to increase density
Paragraph, just
outside of
take
the
the
half
center.
mile to get lower density inside, and I couldn't meet that 40%. The 40% leaves very little leverage.
Huh.
So you have to limit the amount you have outside the half mile to get that 40% of the units within the
In
half
a
mile.
file.
Yeah. Or else you're diluting your numbers.
I should get it.
I forgot it's not mobile. So go on up here, here are the markers. I'll look it up afterwards instead of.
So I think it's pretty clear. It's tied to the
Do you have it on?
Yeah.
No, I keep forgetting my mobile phone. Their site is mobile.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna cluster them with signs.
Assuming this is the latest
Oh,
version.
sorry.
Yes.
Right.
That's all right. Well, and the other thing I want to be sure we talk about is.
Oh, no, I had to be.
You can come look if you want, Mary.
Yes, I would love to see the maps. I haven't been
Yes,
busy.
come on over. Okay, marker two.
I'm not so sure. I'm gonna say.
So you were mentioning.
Yes. Okay, here it is.
Yes, so fix that. Please do. Ah,
Yeah.
aha, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that
And
got
then-
lost in the scribble.
And then this one goes all the way over to here. Here's the other one. So it goes here, then it goes down. No, it must go up to here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes to here.
You can just give her this page.
Yeah,
Yeah, but she
Yeah.
wants it on this map.
okay, so let's see if we can draw it, Sarah. So here you go. You go here. That's there.
Actually, Chris,
Yes.
they won't be able to see what we're doing if I'm sharing the screen. Do you think it's
So
more
you go
important that
here,
we share the
right?
screen or
And then,
have
go
it so that
up
they can see?
here.
Yeah.
yeah,
Let me see how quickly.
yeah,
how it looks.
two, and
Then we
then
can
you
go back
go
and forth.
in
Yeah.
and follow that process.
Sorry, are you doing that?
Just go in there.
Oh, beautiful.
And
No,
then
you go
put it
here. and you include that property over there.
Yeah,
Well, maybe you can give me someone.
yeah, and then
Go
you
here.
yeah,
We're all
follow it
set.
down.
Yeah, yeah.
And it looks like it includes
It goes
this,
up here.
and then, whoops, and then it goes over, right, exactly, it goes over one
Oh, no.
property, and then back down, and then it includes actually.
No erasers.
No eraser.
Yeah, see markers.
But then what's
It's
it
on
going
there.
Desmond?
It's,
It
well,
goes this
it
side of
goes
Desmond,
this
right?
side of Desmond, right,
Down to where?
down to
This
the-
property.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the old factory. You see anything?
Oh, wait to the end.
Yeah. Yes, that's it.
Ah, yes, we did not have that on the map last time.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, we didn't.
Yeah, no worries.
we're clear about it.
That's why we do this.
That's it. Well, wait, we're not done. So, okay, let's see if we got this right. So we've got this little thing sticking out of it, and then we have this here, right? Is that what we've got? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay.
It's here from there.
This.
Yeah. Okey doke. And then that goes down there, and then there's all of
This.
this, yep, that's it. It's a pretty big area, it's already pretty dense,
Well, it's all the condos.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's it. And yeah, we can go along here, I mean, it goes, the whole district would go, of course, go across the streets.
But there's something wrong here.
I don't think so.
Oh, no, okay.
I think that-
And then it goes down here.
Yep,
What a weird shaped district.
it is. Can't, no one can complain about spot zoning, right?
Asking for.
Wait a minute. There's something wrong.
What do you think is wrong?
Oh, this line shouldn't be here. This line goes up here, right?
No, it goes all the way down. The only line that's extra is this little guy.
So Emily, I have a question. If a, you know, we're including roadways
Yes.
in the district.
Yep.
If the district ends at the roadway, is it the roadway not included suddenly?
Ah, so there you go. So if you've got the streets coming down here, your roadway's coming around here, your district is on this side, these parcels are not within the district, draw your line here. So
Oh,
I'm not
yeah,
going
just-
I'm not going to include the roadway if the roadway isn't part of the
All right,
whole
because
district.
if we include the roadway, it potentially goes down.
On the edges, no road.
On the edges, no
Yeah,
road.
yeah. I had to make.
Oh,
some
wow.
Corrections to.
Huh,
another
so that's good, okay,
Yeah.
let me be sure, so along this line, you would not include.
No road.
That
this
is
road.
correct, yes.
Yeah.
The only road that would be included is this little piece of Norwood. And perhaps this piece of road.
Yes. Yep,
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay, good. That's great, actually.
No, that piece of book wouldn't be included.
Well, sure, because it goes across.
Yeah. because, yeah, for this section.
No, I pay a lot of attention to that when
Just
we're
that
drawing our
part.
districts,
Great.
so, yeah.
Good.
Yeah, okay, so then this part of Elm Street would be included.
Yeah,
That would be it.
Now,
Pine.
this is pink,
Yes,
because that's a different zoning district.
it's different sub-district. So you
It's
have
one-
four, we had four sub-district, and the reason is,
Okay.
we did it as four different sub-districts, so don't block the camera, is because as we were talking, we were thinking about potential different densities in
Yep.
each sub-district. So we want to draw them out, so as we're working with the model, we can raise or lower the densities to see what happens.
But since this one and this one are both less than 5 acres, they have to be combined.
With-
Yeah, these are all, this is all
One
one
district.
district, but it's got the sub-districts
sub-districts.
within the
I see.
district, yeah.
So can we adjust,
They
have
can be
slightly different zoning for
Exactly.
sub-districts?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they can be
Oh,
less than 5 acres.
Yes,
Great,
as long as they're contiguous within the larger district, absolutely.
that is
What you
great.
can't do is put this one off by itself.
Right,
because-
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Not big
okay.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, okay.
So,
Oh, good.
yeah, that's why I say you've got quite a bit of flexibility in how you're thinking about
It's
doing
either
this.
granite or marsh or the ocean.
So we've added one,
Yeah.
which is great. We've clarified another, which is great. Anything on this map that, we talked about this, but we haven't done anything with it. Anything on this map we should take off that we don't want to
I
consider,
think that's just all.
right? Thoughts, how does that work with the criteria?
I think the problem is there's too few lots,
Mhm.
so it's easier for a developer to purchase up the lots and make a huge edifice.
Right?
Whereas these other areas are smaller lots. And in order to have enough to build on, you have to buy up like 20 odd lots from people.
Oh, this is Masconomo and
Yeah,
And Old Neck Road.
That's C Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, the
Yeah.
reason it landed there, I think, is because we were trying to,
no, it's, let's see where.
Yeah, Betsy
well,
pointed it
but
out.
there was a broader reason than that, which was we were trying to test out the idea of putting the
There's more,
zones where things are not so
Right.
dense,
You just-
as opposed to
Right.
further densifying
But
the
as we've
downtown.
looked at it further, the challenge with that is the larger the properties, the fewer owners you have to buy from, and the larger project you can
So-
have.
And the
So there's a
more
good reason
additional
to
units you
restrain
get.
that.
Right.
So there's a reason maybe why you do this, which is, there's a huge hill up there.
Huge what?
A hill.
Yeah.
So,
It's
so,
Thunderbolt Hill.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
so there'd be buildings kind of around the hill, I assume is what would happen. And they'd be less noticeable as a result.
so that
knows
also
what would
brings
happen?
something else
last.
is,
Well, I
you
guess
know,
they could take
you've been
it off the top,
assuming like one large building. Again, thinking about the different rules for each area, you know, you could have a requirement that the buildings have to be shorter, that you're allowing multiple buildings on one lot. So you're not having a single massive building. So just keep that in mind as we look at these areas. We have yet to talk about what the rules are.
Yeah, I mean, I think our concern is
And
the
it-
ability to merge acres to create a
Right.
larger lot.
and that makes perfect sense,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Is part of the,
I've said from the beginning that I thought we should be reaching outside of the, of the general district in the downtown to some extent. But I agree with you, Sarah. I don't think that's a good choice because the lots are too big.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what would you pick, Richard?
There's this area over here,
I think
and you could come up. I mean, I think in general, you gotta stick with 1 acre lots or smaller, or you're gonna get big developments. That's just what I was thinking. I think there's
So what
a
did
number
you
of areas of
point
town. Well, we already
Have
laid out this
included
area.
that,
We
right?
could move up this direction if we chose to. There's areas there. I'm not sure we need that.
I don't think
I
we
think we
need
got
I
it.
think we
so
may
many.
be, I think we may be very
I
close to
think
where
with
we need to be.
these two and the LCD, we may have more than enough.
Well, actually, this is more than enough.
right.
This,
Yeah. That's 15,
Quite a bit more.
23, 20, almost 24 acres,
So what's wrong with that?
right?
well, it's not 39.
Well, it's not, we're
Right.
not trying to, We-
7, 9, 16, yeah,
It's
23.
22.
So if you have this and the one we just, this one,
as you want to test it to see
Yeah.
Yeah.
how it comes out differently.
I
I
got
mean,
no
'cause
problem
our-
testing it, but I sure hope we don't do more than we have to.
Right,
inside the-
Right, no, I don't think anybody wants to do that, but I think our job is to provide options for the folks in town to talk about and react to.
Yeah, but it'd be relatively simple. You can
Yeah,
get
yeah.
20 options and
two.
it's gonna be
No.
confusing.
Yeah,
We're-
no,
we're
we really
talking-
want to narrow it
We're
down.
talking
Narrowing
about
it
two
down.
options.
Yeah.
We're talking about two options.
So
well-
am I hearing general agreement that C should come out?
Yes.
I think C should
I
come.
agree.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree.
Okay.
What do you think, Denny?
I think I generally concur. I do agree that, I mean, just judging from my experience, the larger the lot and the fewer the lots to buy. It's a
Easier
prescription for,
transaction costs.
it's a prescription for development.
Okay, let me pass on C.
Where's the price of buying that piece?
Yeah,
Be pretty
for
steep.
each of those houses are many millions.
Yeah,
Okay, and what about this district? Gang.
I kind of like that one.
So I think we're gonna model that two ways, right? We are going to model it as your mixed use district, so leave it alone and leave it as a mixed use and see what that happens. We can continue to keep it in as a multifamily district for now as well.
should we,
In fact-
should we
in fact-
take Crosby's out of it?
Well, it's not just Crosby's, you've got this whole commercial district here, which you're
Well,
now.
but this commercial district,
I'll
you
have to make
wouldn't
sure it's
mind
mixed use.
having something done to it.
Yeah, but would you like to
Richdale's
have it
and
turned
the
into condos?
garage. Well, the ones right next to it are condos.
I
But
understand,
you
so
could
that wasn't my
exclude-
question. Would you
And
like to
you've
see
got-
that, would you like to see commercial disappear from those?
If it was prettier than what's there.
I mean, I don't think that's.
I don't-
No, I think,
choice.
I think. we need
But
to
I think
about-
you could exclude this side of Summer Street,
Okay,
because it's all one parcel.
But the problem with this parcel is it's not big enough, so you have to go over here.
Right. But this total is 10 acres.
right, you'd have to figure out how that split. You know, is it 6 and 4? Is it 5 and 5? Yeah, I mean, eyeballing it from where I'm standing here with fuzzy glasses on, it looks roughly even, but I wouldn't wanna.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yes.
think
It's
these
worth-
areas, I'm with you, I think these areas should be rezoned sooner or later. And done in a way that preserves the downtown and.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure we can do that in the context of an MBTA district and have a happy result.
Well, what if we make it a multi-family district? So,
Multi-use,
A mandatory mixed use.
a mixture,
yeah, mixed use.
Multifamily.
or maybe just say, well,
Include this section.
with an incentive for residential.
Which is already. But commercial is one lot.
I don't think we're ready to take it out, is my conclusion, listening to the discussion.
Can we have a zone that crosses property boundaries? So we
But
could,
it's,
so that we could just,
Like you're.
Cut through the middle of Crosby.
Custom lot now?
For
here.
the MBTA
Don't
communities
run.
that
I'm not gonna
have to.
Where do we buy the milk?
so you,
Wait, can you
a good
finish
question.
this?
wait,
You have to
Assuming-
model the entire parcel.
right, yeah,
Okay.
You can't.
You can't cut a lot of that.
However, other zoning changes that you might make that have nothing to do with the
Right.
MBTA zone. Yes.
okay,
I'm not a fan of split parcels, but you know, that's me as a planner. I like them to be neat and tidy, but. there
well,
could be
they've
good reasons
split,
for doing it.
they've split a building into.
I know, that always drives me crazy when I start, it's like, huh.
But I mean, it'd be nice to include all of this.
It would,
Mhm.
particularly that.
Yeah,
Right, I mean, you could draw around, right? There's a parcel line there.
Yeah, we
That's
could,
a parcel
we
line.
could
That's
exclude
not-
this side of the
You
street,
could do that, yes.
which isn't gonna take out.
Well, you're gonna take out a big part of the downtown as no longer commercial, or at least
Yeah.
potentially no longer commercial.
I-
That's what concerns me.
Yeah,
I'm more
this
than
is
happy to
only-
leave it in
this
to
is
continue the
beyond-
conversation.
I would happily leave it in.
This
The-
is,
the-
this is not on Beach Street.
I know, but you can't get there without going through commercial.
Right. Well, you're using Ace Hardware to get from,
Ace Hardware has never been friendly for getting from. It
Right,
took-
no,
it took
no.
10 years to
To
find
get
a
that
path,
path. The
And it
path,
doesn't cross Ace or
and
Hardwick.
it doesn't cross Ace Hardware.
no, and the path is great, by the way.
Why don't you leave it as is until after we've done the other
Yeah.
modeling we
Yeah.
talked about, and then we can revisit it.
The only one I would object to is the whole general district. I mean, because I don't think we want to rezone the whole general district.
Well, but do we want to do it simply as an exercise, as an illustration? Or it's not worth it?
I don't think it's
Okay.
worth it.
No, I
I
don't
think it's too
either.
confusing.
Okay,
Yeah,
It's gonna be a terrible result. It's gonna be a very low density and it's not
Just-
gonna support any
But
argument.
you still want me to model the 3 units.
In the in the
zoning.
districts we selected,
Yes.
not in the
Not in the
whole
whole
general.
Not in the whole general.
Yeah.
okay.
That will limit the scope of work and,
yeah,
Yeah.
right. So then it's 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Yeah,
and that will
okay.
just like tell us. So, oh, you put an X through that, yeah.
Let me ask a dumb question.
So there's an X for this.
If you rezoned and changed the requirements within the general district so that some of the lots would become conforming,
Mhm.
is that a strategy that's worth looking at?
It's possible
Why would you do that?
to not have to change zoning. I mean,
Well, because it would probably, if you crafted it properly, it might give you more options to, within the district, to meet the density requirement.
the only problem with that is that the more acreage you include, the more difficult it is to get that 15 units per
The
acre.
density.
I don't see how that could possibly work. Because we've still got to have 15 acres with 15 units
15
per acre.
acre.
Yeah,
And you've got lots of acreage.
You know, okay.
You would
that's
have
the
to
problem.
start upping the density elsewhere to get to that average of 15 units.
I mean, I think that the general district has been has seen as little demolition as it has,
Right.
because everything's non-compliant.
Yeah.
The non-compliance was carefully
Protects.
structured into the zoning
It
laws in
puts the
nineteen
brakes.
45. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah, puts the brakes in.
Not convinced of that.
Anything else on this map?
No, I think we're done.
So I'm gonna switch over maps here, and then I'll go switch over maps on the laptop. And now we can talk.
Oh,
So we've
darn.
now talked about these already, but now we've got our areas here, here, and back maybe to that discussion there. Let's switch over maps from the screen.
Yeah, this one, we need to decrease the size.
Yeah, like.
Because if we keep it so big, then we don't have sufficient units within the half mile, right? Because there's too many units out here.
Clarification on that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I have to make a confession to you,
yeah,
Yes,
that I was wrong.
okay.
okay.
I had a conversation.
You're
with-
fired.
Never.
There are the maps. So it was my understanding based on, conversations I've had with people over the summer, that it was 40% of the total land area and 40% of the total unit count.
Okay,
You will be pleased to hear that I am in fact incorrect.
okay.
It was clarified from HLC to me last week, so this is
Ah.
breaking news.
Hot.
Yeah.
Hot.
That it is of your required area, 40%, and 40% of your required capacity.
So you can average.
So it's let me sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's say to make the math simple, we've
Right.
got 40 acres. It's actually 39.
Right,
So basically 16 acres has to be within the circle.
Yes.
And that's all.
yes, and that means that if you
40%.
don't have, if you decide that you're going to do 100 acres, it's still the 16 acres. It's not 40 acres, which is what I said last time.
And,
Oh,
and
so my
40% of the
apologies.
500 odd units need to be within the half
So
mile.
40% of the 585.
Yes,
Yeah.
but if you, again, for some reason, decide that you're zoning for, more than 585,
Mhm.
still 40% of the 585, not say 40% of
The
a
total.
1,000.
Good, okay.
Exactly.
Oh,
Okay, good, that makes it
Phew,
easier.
that's so much simpler.
As I said to HLC, I really hate being wrong, but if I'm going to be wrong, I like to be wrong in my favor.
I would say in your client's favor for sure.
Is that because because there's parcels there that are too big for us to get up to a smaller number?
Well, if we use the 75 acre and if it was as we prior thought, then we couldn't get the 40% in here. It would have greatly increased the amount, but she's saying this size of this won't
Doesn't matter.
impact
But
that.
my question is, why were we thinking of 75 acres?
I
We
think
shouldn't
that
be
was-
thinking of it.
I think that was just
Well-
something drawn and we need to decrease
right.
it.
I can't see why we would pick any more than we have to.
Right,
I
I
asked to look at
also,
it, so I looked at it.
I'm very confused here because we currently, is this the existing building?
That's the existing,
This
trucking storage.
That's
What's that?
Cape Ann Storage, Tim Brady's property at 1 Beaver Lane.
Right.
No, that isn't.
No, it isn't.
That
because
is family
that's
medicine.
That's okay, correct.
This is family
That's the
medicine.
medical building.
Ah,
This
okay,
is Cape Ann Storage.
right, okay.
This is the map.
Right.
Okay, and this is excluded for what reason? I mean, the topography
Conservation.
stuff, that is conservation land?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is all owned by trustees.
Ah, okay,
And just for people watching at home, I know you can see the hands, but we're talking about A at the moment on this map.
yes, okay.
Which is out in
So is there a
Alzheimer's.
reason we wouldn't just limit it to this? Do you have a sense about how many acres that is?
No, I'd have
think
to
it
go
was
back and
23.
look, but I
It's a
think,
goodly
again,
amount of acres.
and it's,
Some of it's
I
excluded.
have it.
no, I was
someplace.
looking for the parcel lines, whether the roads were actually parcel lines or not. I'd have to check on that. So that's a parcel, sorry, wrong glasses. That's a parcel, that,
This is a separate parcel.
there's the parcel line. I see
Yeah.
it there. Okay, that one, that's the parcel line.
And this is a
Sorry.
parcel, and then this is 40 acres. of
So if
another
you
parcel.
wanted to test just that, we could draw along that parcel line. That's fine.
Yeah, it would be good to do that.
Okay. So.
Because there is an existing building there, there's a lot of parking, there's water resource.
Here is the parcel line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
And
And our justification for doing this is workforce housing for cell signaling?
Yes,
Whatever.
Well,
I
it
don't
is, it
think
is
we need to
compliance.
define what it's for.
This
Well,
parcel,
somebody people's gonna have
has recently, fairly recently been bought
Okay.
for industrial development with a company that's our dear friend. They have-
Biolab.
They have offered to make all of this conservation.
Oh.
So I don't think they
Very
would like to see us.
Housing over it, yeah, okay.
Well, they were amenable to it. Somebody asked them.
Yeah.
They did it.
But they would be fine with that.
Oh, yeah,
Okay, great.
Well, and I think that
maybe
if,
even that too.
what was, oh, man,
That's the matter.
yeah.
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 okay, so.
That could be a site for assisted living or
Great.
something.
Okay, so we can test.
And
those.
that's 10 acres.
Okay, good to know.
Well, I know this purchase is 10. Yeah. The map.
Okay.
All right, so there's that one now. We had talked about removing all of the Bs,
Yeah.
2 out of the 3 Bs,
All of these.
all of the Bs, are we all,
Yeah.
I agree, all of them should. go.
Yeah, yeah.
so no.
You
no
guys
dissent?
agree? Denny?
Yeah.
Okay.
About 10. I have one.
That
I
was-
think
that
this
was-
guy is about 10, that's about.
No, I think that's close to 20. This is 10.
Mhm.
And why are we seizing on that rather than other areas over there?
Well, this is all cell signaling.
The whole,
It's one
The whole
property, there
parcel.
were 2 properties that were merged into one.
this is here?
That's the map.
3708 is 40 acres of the map.
So
This is how big?
10,
This is,
we don't know.
We think it's about 10.
so you
I
need
think
both of these.
Right. And
Yeah,
then
I've got to test it, this one
Gotta see how
singly
big it
and
is.
test the 2 of them together.
I think the Brady property here is like 6 or 7 acres.
Is it contiguous?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it should be.
you could cross
The
include
Brady-
it.
Well, you're thinking, Brady, you're thinking somehow connecting
You
this
could
to
if you
that.
needed it.
I think you've got enough.
I think that's problematic,
Okay.
because if not, you'd have to take that whole parcel,
Mm.
which is
Oh,
quite a
okay.
large one, in order
Yeah.
to make those 2
Okay,
contiguous.
yeah, yeah.
And I don't think you want to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's all excluded land. just for
Maybe-
people not
Right.
seeing my
So,
hands,
yeah,
so-
Maybe this
So
is. a
getting
stupid-
the density that we need.
Exactly, it's just
Maybe.
bring it right back down again, yeah.
Maybe this will strike you as stupid, but why couldn't we zone shell segment?
We could, and we had it in there, but we don't need that much acreage.
And if we zoned it, they might
It's
change. their
40
mind.
acres.
They might fly south and because of that 800-acre development.
I can't, what land is it zoned? I can't see.
Okay.
That's the LCD.
Come closer. It's all LCD.
That's the LCD.
This is the medical building.
Yep,
This is the MAC.
okay.
This is cell signaling,
this is the storage.
But what's the parcel you're saying to zone?
these two maybe. This one.
This one certainly,
And maybe
where
this one, if we need it.
Where there's already
Map, the
development
map.
and parking.
Okay, and how many acres is that?
We don't know how much this is exactly. We know the MAC. is
More than
out there.
10.
10, more than 10. I think
Yeah.
10 plus, but I
So
don't.
the MAC, but not the cell signaling property.
Right, the cell signaling is a separate parcel over here, which is 40 acres.
Yeah, but they own it.
They own it.
They own the MAC. Okay,
Right, yes,
thank you.
yeah.
They probably also. own
And
land.
the idea of the
They do,
map
but it's a separate
property
entity.
Yes.
is
It's
if
New
there are
Quarry
enough,
LLC, not Old Quarry LLC.
the idea of including this is because if this winds up being insufficient in some way. in
Yeah.
terms of it,
Yeah,
For sensitivity or whatever.
And again, depending on what you do with the density and the average, it might allow you to push something else higher or lower, depending on what you do. So
Okay.
it gives you some flexibility.
Okay,
So this is great. This is terrific.
so we're down to 4 areas.
Yeah,
4
so we've got
possibilities.
this one here, one and two, so A
and
and
we
B.
didn't talk about over here.
We haven't talked about over there yet, which we can
Wow.
do. And then you've got one whole sub-district cluster here. We've taken that off.
And then
We're
3.
leaving that at the moment
Yeah.
to see what happens.
Yeah, so 4.
So far, that's what I.
We just made a comment I want to ask about, which
Yeah, let me put this back.
I think I know the answer. You said this could push things up and down. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Yeah, so remember with the density, the dwelling units per acre, it has to be an average of 15. So that allows you the option of if there's an area where you want to put the dwelling units per acre lower, then you'd need another area where it needs to go higher, right?
But if these are the only 2 units outside the circle, it really wouldn't give us any flexibility at all.
Oh, no, it would. So say, for example, you wanted to do
Lower than-
12 units per acre in this area, you would have to go.
As long as
Higher
we got
density.
That is a
40
question.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what you were getting at before. So
Yeah.
we can average across the circle.
We can, yes, oh, yes, in terms of
Yeah.
dwelling units per acre, absolutely. It's just the unit capacity and the number of acres.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
a
got that.
particular amount, yeah, but you can.
But the averaging can go
So
across
if-
the
if we-
entire.
Absolutely.
If we have more than 15
Which
acres.
is great.
Got it.
Within
No,
the
I got it. I
yeah,
got it.
within the circle, we
were
can have
under the
lower
impression
density.
that that was
Yeah.
not allowed.
Yeah,
Now it is allowed.
Yeah.
So we just have to get to 585 units.
right.
585 units and
Somewhere-
39
somewhere
in that-
With
in that
40% of them here.
So that is actually, that's really important as we test these things. We'll test it under the existing zoning and it won't work, which means our next step is to find out what would work. So what I'm hearing is, Emily, please have your team target 585 units and see what it takes to get to there. Does that make
Fool around
sense?
with it, yes,
Yeah,
please.
exactly. So that we come back to you next time and say, you already know it doesn't comply. We proved that. Let's show you the different ways it could comply.
Mhm.
So,
Because, and out here, we already allow
great.
higher buildings.
Mhm.
So
What's the building height there?
does anyone disagree with the idea that we would generally favor higher density out here and lower
Yes.
density in here?
Yes.
All right,
Ooh,
Absolutely.
585.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but it's just me.
Tell me why you say that.
Well, because every unit that we generate capacity for out there is gonna be a new unit. The ones we generate downtown, there's not gonna be that many more units, because there already are a bunch of units.
Plus, I think
Okay.
the other,
Ah,
the
good
other,
point.
the
Yeah,
other
yeah.
aspect here is, this is really designed to be
Sorry, Mike.
transit-oriented development.
Wait, say again. Ben.
The whole purpose of this, at least in part, is to achieve transit-oriented development, which basically means units downtown that you can walk.
Right.
Yes,
You go out there, you ain't
you
walking.
need a
You're
bus.
driving.
You hope cell signaling has a bus that goes from.
I can tell you from experience, when you're not,
Nobody will
Not
take
gonna
it.
work.
you're not gonna do that.
Yeah.
It's prohibitive.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And
So-
cell signaling doesn't need to get people downtown.
So
Yeah,
you
it
said
is.
Mike had a
Businesses.
question.
Yeah,
Mike?
Mike,
Someone said, Mike,
Mike's got his hand up.
Mike's got his hand up. Mike, do you have your hand up?
No, no, I do not. Nope.
Does
Would you like
anybody
to
else?
talk anyway?
So
Does anybody else have that?
do me a favor
Can't see where the
and
maps
explain the density versus the land again.
Okay, three things to think about. Geography, which is the land, so that's the land base. The units per acre, which is the density, and the unit capacity, which is the total number of units within a given geography.
That could be built.
That could be built, that is, yes, that's the capacity. So land, geography, you have to have a certain amount of land within here. You have to serve a certain amount of units within here. Obviously, everything else can be out here. But dwelling units per 40%. But dwelling units per acre can be averaged across all of these.
All the
Yes.
districts.
And the new information is that you only have to have 40% of your required land and 40% of your required units here, not of your total, which is what I had told you last
That's
time.
what's confusing me. If we had to have 40% of our required units here, then we're not averaging across the circle.
We're not averaging units, we're averaging dwelling units per
We are
acre.
if we have more than 585 total
If we have to have 40% of our units inside the
of the
circle,
585.
if we have to have 40% of our units inside the circle.
Yeah.
And 40% of the land inside the circle, then that's a density of 15 units per acre. There's no getting away from it.
Well, no, because you can have more
Oh,
acreage than the
oh, I
15
see what
acres
you're
if you
saying.
decrease the
Your
density.
Absolute minimum, I
Yeah.
will tell you. You can get close mathematically to your absolute minimum. It's highly unlikely that you're going to get exactly to your absolute minimum. And so therefore, you will probably have a little bit more than 40% of geography and units here, a little bit less there, which means that you are averaging your dwelling units per acre across the circle.
I think I want to understand something you just said.
Yeah.
My understanding was that we have to have 39 acres zoned to an average of 15 units per acre,
Correct.
Yes.
period.
But if we have 20 acres in the downtown area
Mhm.
and 40% of the units, that can be less than 15
So it could be less dense.
density,
Yeah.
as long as this is more than.
As long as the whole thing together.
Yeah.
becomes
Yeah, but we're not
50.
gonna do that. I mean, given our parcel sizes, there's absolutely no
We've
reason.
come up with more than 15
I
acres.
understand that, but we can draw these lines anywhere we want. Our parcels are small. There's no reason for us to zone more than
I think
15
we need to
acres.
consider it if it
Why?
impacts density.
Because that's the way we get to 12 units per acre.
No, we don't, it doesn't help us. It does, maybe I've got this wrong, but I don't see how it helps us at all to zone more than 15 acres inside the circle.
Because it winds up with less density inside the circle.
No, it doesn't.
So I think
Yes.
what will probably be easier, because I had a client get worried about this the other day. She said, Emily, how come you're showing me with the model 21 units per acre when we have a limit of 30 units per acre? Why is it not at 30? And I said, because it depends on parcels within the geography. Because remember that this is calculated on a parcel by parcel level. So I don't think we should worry yet about what's here and what's here. Let us test these. Let us give you a couple of different scenarios that show you how we comply and what that means. And then we can come back and say, oh, no, we do not like that at all. Because I am worried. I think your point is a good one. I'm looking at the sizes here. I'm looking at sizes here. I'm looking at sizes of the area that we just called out to be added that I don't even know what it's going to do yet. And I think it'll be more fruitful once you have a table in front of you, a geography in front of you to have that conversation.
You're right, mathematically, if it's 40-40, it doesn't get you anywhere.
Exactly.
The question is, if this winds up being 50, and you can wind up with a lower density here if you have.
But there's no
higher
reason
density
for it
there.
to be 50. That's my point. It doesn't buy you, it
Well,
doesn't gain you anything.
There might be
It
a
does.
It does.
planning
It-
reason as opposed to a
Exactly.
mathematical reason.
A
that-
planning reason, yes, but
Yeah.
in terms of,
Yeah.
meeting the MBTA goals,
It
it
can be a
doesn't get
lower
us.
density.
It can be a lower density.
No, it can't.
Yes, because your 40% is based on this 585. And so if you have more than 17 acres here, you can have lower density and then you have higher density out here to
Okay, well, that's
offset
what I
it.
don't understand, and maybe you're right, but my understanding was we had to achieve 15 units per acre.
No,
Across all of them.
across
all.
Average
everything.
of 15
Average,
minutes per
average
acre.
number.
inside and outside.
So we could go for lower density with more acres here,
Yeah,
Yes.
and
and then even more
And
units,
higher
and
density.
much higher density out here.
yes,
Yes.
Okay.
yeah.
I see.
But I'm not confirming until I see them. I reserve my right to see them.
Reasonable, reasonable.
So,
Okay, good.
anything else for here? So then,
I don't think so.
okay, so
Great.
then what I want to do is I just want to take it back
Oh,
to the screen and show people what we did.
Okay,
yeah.
there's one question that we didn't touch, which is this, because
Yes.
Jenny's been talking to the folks at Gordon
Oh,
College.
you have.
I have.
Okay, should we go back to our
Yeah, I
seats to
so.
talk about
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
All right, and then let me give a recap to the people
How we get
online. As much as I can remember, and you can cut, you can all correct me when I forget. Hmm. I want to take pictures of it. Yeah, please do. Please do. Anybody who wants to is more than welcome to. Okay, so for the people online, we have B1, B2, and B3 are now, I can just switch glasses, are now out of consideration. We are looking, and we're going to zoom in here, so that says on the right-hand side. I'm going to zoom here. So we are looking at this parcel here, we're going to model that, we're going to model this parcel here. Looks like we're going to have some, we're going to check the parcel lines, purchase the road lines to make sure we have continuity. So we're going to see what that looks like. And then what we were talking about just now is, given that 40% of the units in the land have to be within this radius, we can average the dwelling units per acre across these two areas. What does that mean? And I see somebody's raised their hand. I'll mention your name to Chris as soon as I finish explaining what we're talking about. We've taken C out, so on the other map, we've taken C out of the conversation. We've taken the general out of the conversation. We're still going to model the existing conditions of the 3 dwelling units per existing building, assuming that can be done, just to see what it is. And then we have added, and I won't be able to draw it on screen, but there's an area up in here that we have added that that we talked about last time, but didn't actually draw out. So we're going to add that in there and then come back this time with what does it take to get to your required minimums among all of these different areas and what are the implications of those. Did I forget anything that covered it? So
You got it.
no.
I just want to clarify, when you say we're taking out the general, what you're talking about is the entire general.
Yes. the
We are
entire
still
general.
considering pieces of it.
Right, thank you for the clarification.
With the right.
Right.
Yeah.
And Sarah's baseline thing is about those within the general,
Mhm.
not the whole general.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, yes.
That's great. Sarah Pierce has her hand raised.
Okay, we
Yes,
generally do. Well, I guess, okay, Sarah, I'll let you ask a question.
Sorry, Chris. Yes, thank you. Sarah Pierce, 9 Front Street. Emily, I had a question for you just generally. My understanding of the MBTA 40A zoning was really meant to be around transit oriented design, but also how is this helping solve the housing crisis in Massachusetts?
Excellent question, and I have a great slide on that I could provide to all of you that one of my colleagues developed in response to a question like that. So the MBTA Communities Act is only one portion of how we address general housing shortage in Massachusetts. And the graphic here, I'm going to describe it rather than showing it to you, but it looks at everything from the unhoused population all the way up to market rate. So if you think of unhoused to extremely low or low income, to middle income workforce housing, to market rate, the MBTA Communities Act falls within the moderate income workforce to market rate. And that's because it is not an affordable housing strategy, although communities are allowed to do a certain level of affordability, which will be part of our later conversations. They're not required to, so it falls at that end. So it's really looking at adding or providing the zoning to add multifamily housing in that band, in that workforce to market rate band. As you say, it is intended to allow for housing in areas that either already have transit or are close to transit. So you have transit communities like Manchester and adjacent communities. We also have adjacent small towns, which is another categorization. And so that the idea is to get people closer to or housing closer to those transit areas, and that's how the planned development portion comes into it. So happy to provide you with the slide at some point if you feel it would be useful for your outreach. So thank you for the question. And Chris. I don't
Thank
know.
you. Yeah, I guess I just wonder because I've been looking at a lot of online media posts and people in adjacent towns are complaining that they have had a ton of market rate housing built by the MBTA, developers who are okay with stuff being developed at outrageous pricing, and I don't see the connection between solving a housing crisis. So I think if we're really into solving a housing crisis, we need to look at affordable housing. And by adding the MBTA housing, that's only going to raise our percentage of affordable units needed. So I'm just confused as to how this all pans out.
I'm hearing murmurings on either side, so I won't speak to any individual communities' policies, but I will say with the communities that I've been working with, and I'm going to turn this back over to Chris. With the communities I've been working with, it's very much about finding the strategy that's right for the individual community and that meets the individual communities, or portion of a individual community's range of housing needs. So, Chris, I think we've got some other people.
Rosemary Costello has a hand raised.
Okay, I guess we weren't supposed to have a question and answer period, but well, why not? Rosemary, what do you have?
Just wanted, thank you, Rosemary Costello, 12 Bennett Street. Just wanted a quick clarification. Are you modeling 40 Beach or not?
Which?
Including the
parcel? No, at the moment, we're not.
No. That's Harbor's Point.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes. Sorry, I'm not familiar with all the addresses. Yeah. Yes, that we took, oh, I see that C on our map. We took that out.
Yeah, we may model it later, but not for now.
I personally would like to see that modeled.
Okay.
I think that's an interesting property with existing parking and infrastructure.
I thought we agreed today that we were going to discuss.
Harbor
this further.
Point.
We
It's
have,
not
Did
C.
agree, we discussed it.
Oh, did I?
It's
I'm
not
sorry.
C.
I
Just the problem there is that we don't yet have a good enough understanding of what we might be able to do.
right.
Okay.
So we're not closing it out, we're just not
Putting it to
modeling.
one
We
side.
also don't
Could
know
we,
what
could
the
we, could we
parameters
have
are.
one person talk at a time?
Yeah.
I had a complaint, a comment earlier that it would be largely impossible to follow this discussion for somebody online because we're talking on top of each other and mumbling.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Ann. Are there any other questions out there?
Can I just add to that, Harbor's Point? I think the other answer we do not have is the agreement with respect to the 74 some odd parking spaces dedicated to the MBTA. And we don't know the specifics of that agreement and how that impacts the amount of parking in that area. Because that may preclude us from including it. Thanks to the MBTA.
Any other hands raised?
No.
Okay, so let's go to Denny here and talk about the other parcel of the LCD.
I met with, on the 13th of December with, 3 officials from Gordon College and talked about the land that the Gordon Foundation owns, which I presume is a nonprofit entity, but I didn't delve into that. And we discussed the possibility of several things. The first of which was, would they be open to a change in zoning from limited commercial to multifamily at a density of 15 to the acre? And with some contingencies to include taking the vast preponderance of that land and put it into conservation. And that's relevant because the town's water supply, or a significant component of it, it comes from the land out there, the ponds out there. Second, there are vernal pools out there, which would also be protected. So they would be constrained in terms of how much of the acreage they could use. And they were receptive to it, at least the fellows that I met. One of whom has, I guess, a special advisor to the president. One is the director of campus planning, environmental health and safety. One was the CFO, but he apparently is gone. May not be a good sign. So I just dinged them earlier, I guess yesterday, where are you with this? Because time's a wasting. But I would say the initial reaction was favorable, because I think they recognize that that particular parcel has much more appeal to a multifamily developer than it does to probably a commercial or certainly an office use. It is, I think, you can tell me whether it's excluded land at the present time, but they would be, I think, receptive to doing whatever would be necessary to take it out of that category. It's really now basically used as conservation walks and things like that.
So I'll have a look. You said it was owned by the Gordon Foundation rather than, let's check the assessor's data and see what it's listed as for the ownership. There is a way to override the model in limited circumstances, which allows us to test parcels that are excluded land. We can check it, see what it looks like, and then if it's something where the conversation should go further, then I think we talk to HLC and find out what they would require. But we can certainly see if it would be a useful part of the strategy, and then decide, okay, if it is, what do we do? If it's not, what do we do?
One further point was, I said all of it would be contingent on town meeting being.
Yeah.
Lenny, is there a map that shows the parts of it that could be developed versus the rest that goes to conservation?
We went on a site walk.
That was the whole, most of it. I mean, I think you could isolate a very small portion of the property furthest away from the wetlands, furthest away from the water supply. And ironically, that's closest to where most of the college is. So it would make sense for that. And then, in fact, we walked the whole site with among others, Steve Gang. And at one point, Gordon was going to build, I think, employee housing on a portion of it. Part of it had been cleared. So there's a logical spot for this to go. And it is furthest from the town water supply. It's furthest from the vernal pools. And it's a pretty flat site.
Is it close to 128?
It is close to 128. But that particular site is some distance off 128, but the parcel itself abuts 128 in some spots.
It's a large parcel.
Do you have any idea of what the time would be to get a decision?
Are you familiar with slow and stop?
Slow and stop?
I'm trying to light a fire, and there's another gentleman who's helping in that regard. It works for the college. Coordinating with them to try to put it all.
Great. Would access to that parcel be from Pine Street or from the Gordon College side?
Good question. I think it could be either. I mean, I think the access via Pine Street, there is some terrain that you'd have to navigate, but it's nothing like what we're looking at in the 40B.
I'm just thinking about fire and other,
There's a road there already.
There is water out there.
no. Okay,
There's a road that goes from Pine Street to Gordon College now. And this
It's not
property is
much
on-
of a road.
Well,
Is it fire road or?
it was obviously used, right?
I mean, it's paved most of the way out there. It's, the logical spot from Pine Street is sort of directly across from the
Transfer station.
transfer station.
And it curves around.
Mhm.
And then goes back to Gordon College, and there's a section at the curve that's all disturbed.
Okay.
You can walk in that road and go around and see it.
All
Well,
right,
if it's of interest, we can certainly look at it and see what it does.
See what's underneath the label.
Yeah.
You always lose some information as you're gaining. some
I
information.
know, right?
okay, we done with Emily for the night?
I think so,
So
thank you.
when are we going to see you again? Em?
I think we will coordinate that. I don't remember the date of your next
Okay.
meeting, that's why I'm not saying.
All right.
I think it's the 25th.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of meetings where there's there's another client that I'm balancing the Thursday meetings with, so I think I'm with them, with you, and I
Sure.
don't remember what we were about.
I'm just thinking about times a ticket.
Yes, I
We have
agree.
a town meeting or a series of town meetings that we're going to have to prepare ourselves for, and December of 2024 is moving fast. So we need to have priority on this.
And obviously, that's my intent as well, so let me confirm the schedule with you, Chris.
Sure.
And then we'll be back as soon as we're on the schedule. It'll take us a little while to run some of these, so that's the other issue.
Yeah.
Is 2 weeks too fast?
Should be right, as long as it's not.
Okay.
So I'll get back to you tomorrow.
We can adjust.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Last time we talked about office hours, were you able to find out the answer to that? What happened to them?
Oh, I've seen
Say,
when was the last office hours?
The last one we were notified of was like
Last year.
October or
Okay.
November.
There were consultant office hours, I believe, in December.
Right, and
It
you
got
were gonna,
slowed
you were
down.
gonna find out when the
Uh,
next public one was, or the
okay.
one for town
Municipal.
volunteers.
They
I'll find
probably
out on
got-
that, I'll find out that.
I think they're trying to figure out.
Well, they
whether all the
probably
people.
got overwhelmed with all the submissions.
I will say that in talking with them, yeah, because we got the 12 communities for rapid transit. Plus there are other communities, combination of commuter rail and adjacent that have also already sent in for at least pre-approval review. So I have some hiring is what I heard.
So do we have a target date for when we're going to be submitting for pre-approval review? That's scary.
Yes, and it's, they have up to 90 days to review it, so we should talk about that review. 90 calendar days, that was just confirmed, not 90 business days.
Oh, sure,
90 calendar
okay.
days. Yes, you can imagine, we were very interested in that.
Yeah.
So we need it in August. If we're gonna have a town meeting in November.
Hopefully before then.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I would hope
What?
sooner than August.
Okay, I'm holding you up, I'm not finishing my documents.
That's all right.
We can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is to authorize a subcommittee of the task force to come up with some proposed design guidelines. I'm going to let Richard talk about that.
We're allowed to have design guidelines as part of our applications, I think we all know. And those vary in scope enormously, but I would expect ours will be pretty simple. I've invited 3 architects at this point, agreed to participate with us in cobbling together something, whether it's fish, spiral or steel, stolen.
Richard, can you move in a little bit?
Apparently I can't scoot in. So we're gonna start meeting next Tuesday. I'd like to have some other participation from the committee. out of the task force on that. If anybody is willing to do so, so you probably have some holes in your schedule. Now that the other subcommittee is gone dormant.
Does anybody know who the this is not kind of on the point, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Does anybody know who the architect was who did the Pine Street condos?
Oh, yeah, this is a good question. The Pine Street and
It's
the
a long
Summer,
time
and the
ago.
Summer Street.
And Summer Street.
both.
Oh, and Summer Street, sure, but particularly.
Because
I probably have the developer's name. I know the developer on Summer Street.
Oh,
I
you
mean,
do?
I know who he was.
What about Pine Street?
That was before my time.
Yeah. If
You
we,
probably could find it in the records.
okay, yeah, all right. We're just thinking that that was an interesting execution with some sensitivity to surroundings.
Is this your veiled offer to participate on the subcommittee?
Yep. However, I'm just trying to help if possible.
That'd be great. Are you gonna be able to?
I will try to attend as many of them as I can.
That's great. I know you've got a few things. Anybody else? This is exciting.
I could try to do it.
You
It's not my area of expertise.
want to name the architects? Is that what you're gonna do?
We have John Harden, we have Gary Gilbert, and Paul Strimple was from the Historic Commission.
When do you anticipate
You're
meeting?
getting a,
Well, we're gonna
Disruptor.
decide on Tuesday. I don't have anything up right now other than an initial meeting and I expect to hold the group and figure out what works.
What time Tuesday?
16,
No,
What time?
6:30 on the 16th is the first meeting.
Okay.
On the 16th.
Okay, I'm at a select board meeting, so.
Right, you are. That's right. Forgot.
And I'm happy to come and see if I can be.
Well, it's, yeah, so any,
Yeah, everybody's invited per
Everybody's
usual.
invited, of course.
well, and if you think you might want to participate, if you could let me know what days in general are good or bad, I would. I mean, I can't imagine. Really.
Yes, I will certainly let you know.
So we have I'd like a motion on the table to,
I move we empower the
15th,
subcommittee
16th.
on design
You're talking about
guidelines.
Tuesday, the
you
16th.
hear a
yeah.
second on this?
Second.
It's okay, but we.
Any discussion?
Yeah. No, I'll help.
Tuesdays, gentlemen.
That's an important committee.
It is.
Okay, all in favor?
I,
Opposed?
What time is it on Tuesday?
6:30.
What night? 16. Okay.
Yeah, we have professional people,
Oh, people who work?
people who are.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So it's going to be likely to be evening meetings.
I think so. I'm gonna talk to them to find out. It may
Okay.
be that their schedules are flexible enough. If we can get it into the day, we will, because there's been a.
Shortage of rooms.
So what if they have to be sworn in? So they should go to the city clerk.
No.
I think they do.
Yes.
The architects
They
do?
will become, from what we understand is they will become members of the subcommittee,
Yeah.
even though they are not members of the task. force.
Exactly.
Is Emily a member of the subcommittee?
Emily?
She's a
No, she's a consultant.
Well, why aren't they a consultant?
She's a
Because
paid
we're not paying
consultant.
them.
I'm sorry. we're not-
She's a paid consultant.
an employee hired by the town.
With these guys, you think you can do this out of?
I could give them a call.
Don't do that.
Can we move on?
Yes.
Move on to the task force annual report to the town. I think I got you all a copy. I know Sandy has some comments.
Did you send it to us?
Yes,
Okay.
it's pretty bare bones.
Yeah, which is fine.
You want to take a look at it, Sarah, it's right here?
It's all right. I'll pull it off at home.
Okay.
Were you looking for approval today?
Yes, because I have to submit it by the 22nd.
You can get an extension.
Again, oh, okay. Would people prefer holding this off till the next meeting?
I prefer that we submit it.
I can submit it and ask them to hold it, and if we change it, I'll wait.
I gave you comments, you can do
Yeah.
what you will with them. I mean, basically, I think we should.
But we haven't seen her
Small
comments.
editorial thing.
I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, I can give you comments tomorrow if you want.
Okay, is people okay with giving me approval to submit it, subject to Sarah's comments?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Suppose we
Motion
give
to
you-
that effect?
I can
Suppose we
send
give you
my
permission
comments,
to submit it on the date required, subject to comments that come in between now and then.
That's fine. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Yeah, and I'm happy to send everybody.
All in favor?
I,
Okay,
Just
that's
make sure you CC Gail.
Yes, maybe I should see.
Yeah.
Should I send the comments to Gail?
Yeah,
Yeah, somebody go.
Okay.
We have no meeting minutes to approve, so we can pass that over.
I'm sorry, but when is the date that they have to be submitted?
January 22nd,
22nd.
but we're meeting on the 25th, so you probably could
I probably could get an extension. but-
get an extension to the 25th.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
I've been late in some years.
I'm shocked. So I'm gonna now open this up for any public comment from this evening's meeting. Anyone have any comments in the public?
No hands are raised.
Okay, then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
before we do that, did you want to talk about a
Oh,
couple of the
this
things
I'm
that came
sorry, I
up
forgot.
today?
We have the committee reports, excuse me.
I think we wanted to bring up a couple of things
Yeah,
from our
sorry, I'm
communication
sorry.
subcommittee because we wanted to make everybody aware of what we're talking about and get everyone's input on really two things. One is Chris wants to reach out to the Concom and I can't remember, Open Space. Just to make sure they sort of are up to speed on the MBTA zoning law and any objection to that? Is it okay if we do that as the outreach committee? Do you want to invite them to one of our entire task force meetings?
I would suggest that a representative from the task force attends one of their meetings.
Okay,
That's fine.
Then
Yeah.
it's not a task force meeting per se.
Right.
It's, yeah, one or two people
Okay,
attend it, seems to. make
Sounds
more
good.
sense.
we can make that happen.
Should we consider setting up specific people as liaison to various committees?
That's an interesting.
Well, I think one of the things is there's members of this task force
Who are.
Who are
from
already,
various committees, and they should be tasked with updating their own committees and not needing
okay,
separate meetings, I would think.
Yeah, the one we don't have is like an environmental
Right. Yeah,
group, so I think it's important to reach out to them, but. Okay,
I don't know what
Do you
other
want to talk
committees are
about
missing.
about the DIP meeting then?
Well, he represents the DIP.
I know he does. But there was a meeting that occurred with the downtown improvement. Committee,
right.
so.
We also had a joint meeting with the Downtown Improvement Committee towards the goal of having a public forum that the entire task force would be involved in, obviously, and the entire Downtown Improvement Committee with the major stakeholders in downtown, business owners, people who rent commercial spaces,
residents.
residents. And so DIP is reaching out to gauge the interest of that. And DIP is going to coordinate with Chris to set up a time for that.
Now, I thought that one of the responsibilities of Emily, who's gone now, so we can assign things to her, was to help with public forums,
Yes,
right? So I question how many public forums we want to have before we have Emily engaged to help us run them.
well, I think probably inviting Emily to that, if she's available, would be good, if we could do it. Is trying to get all the business community together for anything is gonna be complicated.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about the residents, and you might want to split it up and not have residents included.
Well, that's one of their suggestions, the DIP said at least have two, so that,
And that, you know, not have residents at that one and have a separate one for
Yeah,
residents.
yeah.
You think we might want to keep a little powder dry for that time when we actually have real
Plans.
plans.
Right, exactly,
In terms of Emily, I mean, I'm worried about her time,
right.
because I think iteration is gonna be
And I'm just-
what's gonna happen a lot, so, I mean, using up her time to do the reaching out to people in the community, I think is kind of a mistake.
I just
mean,
concerned how much we reach out before we have definitive plans, because we've been going long enough now that people are starting to expect something more definitive.
Well, there's still a lot of people who, in terms of the density walk that happened, there's still a lot of people who are coming into consciousness about the whole process and need to be brought along, so we're not quite there yet. And one of the big misunderstandings is what the process is gonna be, so that it takes some time to let people wanna know what's the zoning. And I think it's very important to say there's a whole process we're going through to try and understand what the best options would be. And there's no zoning yet. So, you know, please be patient, keep listening, we'll keep talking.
and there's also the important point to make, which is, we're not,
The
Doing any-
deciders, right?
yeah, we're not the deciders, town meeting is the decider.
We're the option
So
developers.
do we need an article in the Cricket, just kind of
That's
updating-
that's another topic.
Oh.
updating, you know, the progress, and
Yes, one of the
we need to
ideas,
attach a timeline to
one
it.
of the DIP people had a very good idea, which was something like a question of the week to put in the paper
Every week.
every week, so we keep this thing, the pot boiling all along. And we can take our frequently asked questions and
Mhm.
use that as a sort of
Yeah.
format to get this going. So, yeah, I think that's very
And
important.
did you want to talk about, oh, Becky has a question, but did you want to talk about the liaisoning with the planning board?
So we also, met with the planning board has, I'm gonna say this. We had, Sue and I were at a planning board meeting on
Monday.
Monday night. And we asked the planning board how we could start getting engaged. Because the planning board is gonna play a critical role in this. So one of the things we talked about doing is jointly sponsoring a special community forum on a Saturday morning, probably in March, just to talk about zoning, just so people understand what zoning is.
Currently is.
What it currently, just so that they understand there are districts, there are setback requirements, there are all these things that happen.
Well, then, and specifically what each district is, where each district is, and what rules currently apply to each district now. Most people don't know that, but they need to know that by the time they vote on this.
I really think that all the work you're doing is great, but I'm just finding it hard to believe that people are gonna get really engaged until we have a plan. And then I think they're gonna be engaged.
Well, we have to set the table for them, I think is.
Yes. It's a good way to think about it.
Um,
People keep coming to, I mean, it was a cold, windy day and a fair number of people came to the density one.
Becky had a question.
I had just a suggestion that if you are going to be having a question which goes into the Cricket, if you also have something like that goes on the town website, because there are plenty of people who don't receive the Cricket.
Sure.
That's a great idea.
And
So the person who's in charge of all this is Tiffany, and where she's great at doing this.
Yeah, but she has to be asked to do it.
She is,
Has to be asked to do it.
oh, yeah, of course.
yeah, and Sarah Pierce has her hand up as well.
But I thought we were through with public comment.
Oh,
Oh, well.
We'll let Sarah have another go.
Oh, thank you so much, Chris, and thank you, Becky, for allowing me to speak. I just wanted to say that I think it's very important that we thoroughly vet anyone that is coming forward as an architect on this project. and how they might have handled their past jobs or times on planning boards and what their connections might be in general. I think it's really important. I think people who have planning experience, it's a good thing, but not necessarily with all of the names that were mentioned earlier. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
When's our next meeting?
The next meeting is the 25th.
Okay.
Is it, wasn't there some?
January 25th at 6:30 PM. Because the public forum for January 18th was deferred.
Right,
Exactly.
right.
And
Okay,
hopefully we'll have Emily back on the 25th.
No.
hopefully, we're gonna ask her to, yeah, if that works out.
Didn't sound like.
It's really, at this point, the iteration of those models and the manipulation of all the parameters that go on it is the biggest job we have to do.
It's the core of our job. right?
I don't see what we could do that would be very productive without
Without her.
her information.
Well, if she says I can only come on the 26th or 24th or
I
something.
will have to move the meeting.
Yeah, I'd be delighted because I've got two other meetings I've got to go to at 6:30 on
Okay.
the 25th.
I concur. I don't see why we.
All right, well, that's good, that's good.
Well,
So we'll work around Emily's schedule
Well,
for the next meeting.
you need to ask input from people before you start
Sure,
moving meetings.
of
Yeah.
course.
I have meetings almost every day of the week,
We will work this out through Gail.
or we wait till February 8th to have her come in.
Okay,
I move we adjourn.
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You, Chris.
Great.